Way back in August 2023, I saw my doctor. My left tonsil looked like a bright red balloon, and I always felt like I had a dog hair trapped in the back of my throat. My doctor took a look, and he referred me to an otolaryngologist. That's an ear, nose, and throat doctor. I saw my new ENT on September 5th of 2023. She looked at my tonsil, scrunched up her eyebrows, and said something like, "That makes me a little worried. I'm going to do a biopsy." I said, "Right now?" She said, "Yes, right now." She then pulled out an instrument that reminded me of H.R. Giger's Alien. My doctor chomped out a few bites of my tonsil with the alien jaws. Then my new ENT sent the biopsy to the lab. I showed up the next day, and she told me I had squamous cell carcinoma in my left tonsil. Cancer. My ENT told me I had a very common form of cancer that is very treatable, and we caught it early. This cancer was caused by an HPV infection.
Mayo Clinic's Dr. Catherine Price explains where the cancer often develops.
It's largely in the oropharynx, so this part of the throat that is at the tonsil and then circling around to the back of the tongue, and it's where all of this lymphoid-rich tissue lives.
She says these cancers are treatable, but prevention is always better, starting with the HPV vaccine.
My ENT told me she was going to order a PET scan. She predicted the insurance company was probably going to demand a CT scan and an MRI first.
Well, number one scan, first day of the journey.
Oh, I should mention the radiologist, his dad had tonsil cancer.
Oh.
So I got to hear a little bit about that.
Oh, tell me about it.
His dad died from it.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, it's true. Yep. Caught it too late.
What?
Yep.
Well, that's not something we want to hear in your stories.
So that was my doctor's bedside manner. A PET scan is a positron emission tomography scan. A CT scan is a computed tomography scan. MRI stands for magnetic resonance imaging, which uses incredibly powerful magnets. By the way, there's a funny story about an LAPD cop thinking the no metal objects warning outside the MRI room didn't apply to him.
Here's their calculation. They found that this one store, compared to the stores next to it, was using a lot more power. So they were like, oh, therefore, they're having an illegal growing operation. No, they're a fucking lab with an MRI machine. So they go to raid the lab. They find no weed. And while the guy is begging the cops not to go into the MRI room, they barge in, and immediately his gun gets sucked into the MRI machine.
The CT and MRI scans both confirm the likelihood of the cancer diagnosis. So, the PET was approved by the insurance company. Insurance companies are so much better than doctors for determining what a patient needs. Anyway, the PET scan was the conclusive diagnostic test showing I absolutely had cancer in my left palatine tonsil. Not to be confused with the equally evil Emperor Palpatine from the Star Wars universe.
If you will not be turned, you will be destroyed.
The MRI also revealed I have multiple sclerosis. And it looks like I've had this since I was a teenager. It's always been subclinical. In other words, my symptoms have always been just as mysterious to doctors as they were to me. I welcome this diagnosis, though, because it explained so many of the mystery symptoms I've had my whole life. Here's a partial list. I narcoleptically fall asleep every afternoon. It's not me taking too many naps. It's not because I didn't get enough sleep. It's not because I was out partying too hard last night. These and more are all accusations I've heard repeatedly from friends and loved ones. Here's another fun symptom. To the touch, my right foot doesn't feel any colder than my left. To me, my right foot always feels like I'm wearing a cold, wet sock. This is called dysesthesia. I have diplopia. That's double vision. And no, my friendly optometrist, it's not because this commonly happens when people get older. I've had this since I was in high school. Another MS symptom is trouble with memory, thinking, and understanding. I'll circle back to this one later. But first, what even is multiple sclerosis? Multiple means many, and sclerosis is basically scarring.
Multiple sclerosis is a disorder in which the body's immune system attacks the protective covering of the nerve cells in the brain, optic nerve, and spinal cord, called the myelin sheath. And this sheath is often compared to the insulation on an electrical wire. Now, everyone loses brain cells and spinal cord cells as they get older. But if part of the brain or spinal cord has been damaged by MS, the nerve cells in that area will die off faster than the areas around it that are normal.
This brain damage is irreversible, but currently it isn't progressing, at least for now. I'll add that there's a high likelihood the MS was caused by Epstein-Barr virus, another viral infection. A vaccine is currently in the works for that too, but don't get me started again. I was scheduled for 35 treatments of radiation therapy 5 days per week, with weekends off. I'd also be receiving chemotherapy once per week for the same duration. When I was under the radiation gun, locked to the table, the treatments were fairly quick and painless. But after just a couple weeks, I lost the ability to produce saliva. That's called xerostomia. I also lost my sense of taste, but not like, I can't taste anything. More like everything began to taste like foot sweat. This is what happens when you get your taste buds cooked by radiation. I was on a diet of some of the blandest food, but eventually, any food I tried tasted so bad, I just couldn't even keep it in my mouth. That didn't matter though. My temporomandibular joint painfully tightened up, and I couldn't even open my mouth more than about an inch. So, I couldn't eat anyway. That's life-threatening. Because, starvation. So I got an emergency feeding tube, which was as painful as you can imagine. You're basically getting shivved in the gut. All my calories and nutrition got dripped through a tube going into my soft pink underbelly. To do the chemo, I had a port installed in my chest. So between that and the feeding tube, I was being assimilated into the Borg collective.
Your resistance is hopeless.
This allowed the chemo drugs to be injected directly into a vein close to my heart to rapidly spread through my body. When injecting the chemo drugs, which are basically poison, you don't want the poison pooling up in one spot. The chemo drugs going into my heart just made it spread around my body faster. Injecting the chemo drugs into my port was also fairly painless, though not quick. I was in the chemo chair for about 4 hours during every treatment, but the effects of the chemotherapy always hit me hardest the next day. Chemo works by shutting down your body's ability to regenerate cells, especially the fast-growing cells, like cancer. Other fast-growing cells include all the pink bits of your body, like inside your mouth, and other fun places. But it also shuts down your bone marrow, and that affects blood production, which includes your white blood cells. And your white blood cells are on the front lines of your immune system. Chemotherapy caused a few other problems, one of which was hearing loss. So now I wear hearing aids. And then there's what many people call chemo brain. But again, I'll talk about my cognitive issues in a bit. Because my entire immune system was basically deactivated, I was wearing an N95 mask that I never took off, and I was fully vaccinated against COVID. But I still got COVID while getting chemo. I don't recommend getting COVID at all, but especially not while getting chemotherapy. COVID still kills people. And to briefly touch on cognitive decline, yes, brain fog is a symptom of long COVID. So, when I see anyone complaining about other people wearing masks, I don't really hold those people in the highest regard. But I know you, gentle viewer, wouldn't do that. Eventually, I completed the treatment, In the words of my oncologist, you're cured. Since then, I've spent the last year and a half recovering from all those devastating procedures. Some foods still taste a little funny, like I'm sucking on a penny or tonguing an almost dead 9-volt battery, but my sense of taste is now back to about 98%. But let's finally get back to the brain fog. As of now, any mental task takes me at least twice as long, sometimes more. This has made me adopt all kinds of coping mechanisms. And right now, I'm able to mask a lot of this cognitive decline. I look completely lucid in this video. But right now, I'm reading all this off a teleprompter. So, what's causing my cognitive impairment? Is it the lingering effects of chemo brain? Is it the multiple sclerosis? Is it from radiation-induced cognitive decline, having at least part of my brain in the radiation field? Is it the effects of long COVID? It's unlikely any one of these things is the cause, but more likely a combination of at least a couple of them. I'll probably never get a definitive medical diagnosis. I also don't think that diagnosis is really that important. What is diagnosable is the cognitive impairment itself, and I did get that diagnosis. We've all heard the word mindfulness before, but for me, mindfulness is now a way of life. Otherwise, I'll forget what I'm doing in the middle of doing it. I'll often walk into a room and have no idea why I'm even there. But these things happen to everyone. And if you say that, you're not wrong. It might help to imagine what this is like for me by thinking of the times where you just can't quite remember that thing. It's right there, at the edge of your memory, but you just can't quite get to it. Everybody experiences that. What's the name of that song? Who's that actor? What's that word I'm thinking of? Now, imagine that happening 10 times more often. My coping mechanism for not being able to think of the word I'm trying to find is to quickly locate synonyms. So, if you hear me sounding like a pompous, erudite, flibbertigibbet, that's why. It's often because I can't remember common everyday words. There's plenty more I could talk about, but I fear I've already been a huge downer. And to be painfully honest, I also have shame about all this. You should be able to handle all this better. Other people have it much harder than you, and they do just fine. This is all ultimately your fault. So, it's hard for me to save these things, because I've always had a hard time admitting weakness.
Either put on these glasses, or start eating that trash can.
I've never been as hard-boiled cool as my fantasy version of myself. What I'm doing now is taking all my tutorials on this channel and rewatching them. There's some pretty cringe stuff in some of the older videos. Then I'll be reposting them on the other channel I started for the Matchmoving Company. Either I'll repost them or I'll re-record them. Because again, cringe. I also got my system set up to do a live stream, so I'll be doing a weekly demo of some tracking stuff, mostly in Synthesize. Or maybe I'll live stream redoing the old tutorials. Look, this is all a work in progress. And because of the cognitive issues I brought up, I'm going to try this live stream approach. I love writing tutorials, recording them, editing them, doing all the post stuff like sound editing and color grading. It just takes too much time for something I'm doing essentially for free. And through all this, I'm also doing my paying job of tracking shots for movies and TV shows. I'm still pretty okay at the tracking. I just work longer days now. So please do follow the links over to the Matchmoving Company channel and subscribe there. I'm reclaiming my channel here to post the very occasional video essay about storytelling, filmmaking, writing, living with major depressive disorder, recovering from cancer treatment, Pyotr Kropotkin, or whatever else tickles my fancy. But all the VFX stuff is moving to a new neighborhood. Thanks for watching this video. And thanks for watching all my others. I really do appreciate you.